Hello everybody, welcome to ETS. Today I'm going to be going over how to buy low and sell high in trading, okay? So first things first, I want to go over the trade that I took today. Now, in the previous videos, I went over the two setups that I'm looking for, right? The trap and shift, right? Or the pump, coil, and dump, okay? So this was the trap and shift variation trade that I took today on US 30, right? Now we were at the high of the week, right after a market that has been in breakout, new month. Okay, so new month, new timing cycle, new week, right? So, but nonetheless, I have a setup on the day, right? So, price made a lower low heading into the New York Open. Okay, so this is a very key indication of of market structure, guys. When they break daily highs and daily lows, right? Just gotta watch the highs and the lows. Now, you're gonna use the criteria, right, to execute your trade setups um, based on how price is set up on the day on the session that you're trading, right? I took my position right near. Now, one key factor here is that there was major red news at 9 a.m., right? There was third hour news. Um, However, I had my setup and price traded up to the high of the day, right? The high of the current day slash closing price. And all I did was sit back and wait. I just sat back and wait. I waited every single session, guys. Every single session, price is going to print the high and low, and they're going to work from that high and low. Okay. So in the New York Open, right? They opened up the session at the New York Open right here, right? Outside the low of the day. Now I was not looking for a buy low opportunity because we were already at the high of the week at the extreme. I had my signal and I had my setup already in place. Okay, I was hunting a sell high setup today. Okay, however, there was a nail and bail buy low opportunity if you do proceed to trade that, but that's not what I was looking for today. And just one very key thing to note, guys, is that if you ever there's ever major red news and you have a trade setup, always get out before the news because you never know what they're going to do, right? They could spike back and forth and they could chop you, they could chop you up. They could eat into your position and then eventually stop you out like they did here. But yeah, any buyer who was here at the low of the day was, taken out very, very violently, right? Because that's what happens with major red news. Um, if it's news, if you have major red news, always get out before the news release because you never know what's going to happen. Trading the news is gambling, guys. There's a lot of people out there that like to trade the news or whatever, this and that, but that's all bullshit, man. That's all euphoria. That's all gambling. It's oh my god, it's gonna pump up 100 pips or this and that. That's all bullshit, man. All you do is look for your setup, wait for if there's news, wait for the news, etc. Right? So, or get out before the news, right? Never ever count on the news, because it will most likely disappoint, guys. All right. So, yeah, it was a sell high setup. They made a lower low, like I said, they make a lower low, and every session will make a high and low. So they made the low of the session, okay? They made the low of the session, and I believe I went over one of the videos that everything's fractal, okay? So they made a low of the session, but they haven't made a high of the session yet, right? So after the news released, they made a high of the session, and then they started to collapse. I got in right here, and I added a second position here. Now, I went over in the other video, a trap and shift setup is a very, very aggressive setup, guys. So meaning they will give very little wiggle room for a pullback or for whatever, right? So I got in for a second position here because it was, again, having the thesis or the knowing your setup, I guess you could say, is that it will very rarely, if ever, pull back. So they gave me a second entry here, and then I took a third entry here, and I took all my positions out right here, right? Now, I just want to go over some, right, in terms of buying low and selling high, guys. Every single day, they're going to work from the high or they're going to work from the low. And all you got to do is use your criteria, right? So they popped the low of the day here. They started to continue up. We had an inside day. It's, a chop day on this day, right? They popped the low of the day right here, low of the current day. right? And so on and so forth, right? So they pop the low and they pop the high, right? And you could have a sell high setup, buy low setup, whatever, right? They pop the low, they pop the low, they pop the high up here, right? We were outside the high of the day, right? So they started to pump up. I believe there was news, 7:30 news right here, but they started to pump up and they broke the high of the day. They made a high and then they broke the high again at the extreme, and that's how you get that collapse, okay? Heading into the end of the session, right? Excuse me. They popped the low right here, right? And they started to work up. Right now, I'm not saying these are best trade setups or whatever, but I'm just showing you guys, for just so you can see what I'm talking about, right? Now, there are going to be certain market conditions where they will be in breakout or whatever, and certain criteria, and that's how you will, have an edge on buying low and selling high. So in this current market condition, this was a sell high setup because we had a market that has been breaking down, right? I'm sorry, not a sell high setup, but a sell high, I guess, opportunity. I wouldn't say, again, this wouldn't be the best trade setup. They worked to the high and then they started to break down, right? Sell high, buy low, right? Sell high. You're selling at the highest price point of the day / of the session, right? And this was all-time highs right here, guys. So, selling high, as long as you're selling above the high, you should be good. Now again, this, I'm not saying this was a best trade setup. I just want to make that very clear. I'm not saying this was a best trade setup, but I'm just showing you guys for a visual, just for example, how to buy low, sell high, right? Buy low, and on this day you had a sell high and a buy low, right? Now, the certain criteria that I use, right, will dictate whether I sell high and buy low, which obviously is very important. So if you're at the low of the week, right, this is the previous low of the week right here, right, that was broken. It was broken out. They made a peak formation low, and then they worked back up, right? So we're now potentially in a market that could go both ways, right, because we are up high. So you could have your sell high set up above the high of the day, right, trap and shift, but it's going to be nail and bail because you're at the low of the week, okay? So you have to understand when to hold and when to nail and bail, right? So this would be a nail and bail because we are at the high of the week, right? We traded up high outside the high of the day, of the high of the current day, right? We had our trap and shift setup at the high, and then they proceeded to work back down low and gave another opportunity at the low of the day, the low of the current day, right? Because we are trading, and this will be obviously a setup to hold on to because we are at the extreme, right? Again, sell high, buy low, sell high, buy low. Now, I know you guys could probably say, oh, well, looks good in hindsight, whatever. But, if you use this criteria and you use what I'm telling you guys, then, it will help you and you will execute trades like these, right? The ones that go, in the money very fast, right? That's the only type of trade that I want to be in, right? Is the one that goes very fast, right? Now, I haven't been posting a lot. Recently I took a little break, but I will be posting more and more, just so you guys, have everything that you need to be successful in this market, right? But yeah, that's basically the epitome of trading, guys. I mean, you've heard this everywhere. Is buy low, sell high. That's how you make money in trading. Correct, yes, but you also need criteria, and the criteria that I use are 3 objective levels. Keyword objective. Okay, the high, the previous high of the day, previous low of the day, and closing price, and sometimes high and low of the current day, right? If we're at the extreme, right? I'll have my signals, I'll have my setups, and then I will execute the trade. Okay, so that is the key word. Okay, is objective. Okay, that's the key word. All right, there's a lot of people out there that they have subjective levels. Anybody can draw. I will close my eyes right now. Okay, I'll close my eyes right now, and I will, right here. I'm just gonna randomly draw a box. I don't care where it is, right? That's the box. I'm gonna just shrink it a little bit, and boom. That's my subjective level that I could quote unquote teach you guys. But no one is gonna, know or be firm on, oh, is this my support, or is this my resistance, or is this my whatever, bullshit. Like, you can draw boxes anywhere, dude, and just oh yeah, that's the fucking fair value gap. There's my support. Now, if you're making money in trading, that's fine. I applaud you for that, okay? But for me, and I believe anybody that's new that's watching this video, I think you're thinking the same thing when you see, a lot of traders out there drawing all these levels and saying, oh, well, and then going to the screen the next day and they'd be like, oh shit, well, is this my support? Is this my resistance? This and that. I know this because that was me, okay? That was me until I started using objective levels. You can't mess up the high of the day, the previous high of the day. You can't mess that up. You just go back to the previous day and you draw your high, okay? That's all this indicator is. You just go back to the previous day and then you draw your high. That's all it is, okay? It's very objective. You can't mess up these levels, all right? And that's why it's you can trade from these levels confidently because it's the objective levels, right? So yeah, that's really all there is to it. Just buying low, selling high. I like to simplify everything because I don't like to make trading very confusing or whatever, like all these other people do with fair value gaps, liquidity sweeps, or this and that. That's all confusing garbage to me, honestly. But again, if you're making money from that, I applaud you. All right. But to me, it's not something that I'm a big fan of, I guess you could say, or find any interest in. Right. I'm only interested in the objective levels, levels that you can't mess up. That are on the chart that you cannot mess up. Right. I wanted to go over gold real quick too because I was looking at gold. However, I have a rule to not trade before the major red news, and you can see, guys, the US 30 trade I traded after the news release. But there was a sell high setup, right? A trap and shift setup, right? A coil, a trap and shift, right? Coil, trap and shift setup at the high of the day, right? Outside the high of the day, outside the current high of the day. And like I said, you can't mess this up. You can't mess these levels up. These levels are here. You can't mess it up. Right? And that's what I really like about this, is that you can't mess this up. All you got to do is simplify it and be psychologically strong and execute the trade setup for a sell high or a buy low opportunity. Right? Now, I was looking for a low hanging fruit opportunity here, but there was news on the calendar, so I could not take this trade. Right? This trade it broke down heading into the 8 a.m. Window. Right? And I believe gold opened 720, and then the 8 a.m. window, they popped the high, and then they started to come down, and they gave a pullback, a low hanging fruit, which is basically a pullback trade opportunity, and they gave a little pump up. They coiled sideways, and here's the New York Open candle right here, guys. This is the New York Open candle. Okay, you can take a trade here, or you can wait for a candle confirmation engulfment, right, which is 5 minutes after New York Open, right here. This candle opens up 5 minutes after the New York Open and this is the 1 minute chart, guys, because gold is very volatile right now. This is for a 150 pip collapse, right, to the previous high of the day, right? A range expansion of this box. They expanded the range twofold. Okay, so yeah, that's basically everything. And again, everything applies to every single instrument, right? Because everything is objective, and that's why you can't mess this up. Right? I hope you guys learned something from this video. Like and subscribe. Appreciate you watching, and let's get it. We got the rest of the week. Let's go.